So before we start with the actual presentation by Dr. Raju Varshney, I would like to briefly mention few things about Dr. Varshney. Although we have circulated his brief CV to all the participants in all the groups yesterday, but still it is my duty that I should formally introduce the lead speaker. So Dr. Raju Kumar Varshney is an agriculture research scientist specializing in genomics and molecular breeding with more than 2 decades of service in developing countries in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. He holds his PhD in agriculture botany from Chaudhary Charan Singh University, Meerut. And after his postdoctorate fellowship in Germany for 5 years, he joined ICRISAT in 2005. And he is currently serving as Global Research Program Director, Genetic Games, and Director, Center of Excellence in Genomics and Systems Biology at International Crop Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, Patancheru, Hyderabad. He is an honorary and adjunct professor in 10 universities or institutions in Australia, China, Ghana, and India, including the University of Western Australia and the University of Queensland, Australia. He is globally recognized leader for his work on genome sequencing, genomic-assisted breeding, and translational genomics in legume and cereal crops and capacity building in developing countries. Professor Varshney has made centrally important contributions to improving food security in several developing countries of Africa and Asia by creating genomic resources of 10 major orphan tropical crops, including pigeon pea, chickpea, groundnut, and palm millet. He and his colleagues have developed and deployed DNA marker technologies for the identification of useful genetic variation in these key crops. For instance, his colleagues and he use these resources to identify genetic loci and candidate genes for drought and pest tolerance in key staple crops for developing countries. He has initiated and led major international programs that are creating and delivering superior crop varieties to some of the world's poorest farmers. For his outstanding and seminal contributions, Professor Varshney has been honored with several fellowships, awards, and honorary positions at the international level. For instance, Professor Varshney is an elected fellow or academician of all the 4 science academies of India, including Indian National Science Academy, National Academy of Sciences India, Indian Academy of Sciences, and National Academy of Agriculture Sciences, as well as several foreign science academies, including German National Science Academy, the World Academy of Science, American Association for Advancement of Science, Crop Science Society of America, and American Society of Agronomy. As well as he is an honorary fellow of Indian Society of Pulses Research and Development and Arid Zone Research Association of India. He is recipient of several prestigious awards, and including the coveted most prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award 2015, the most coveted award from the Government of India, as well as G.D. Birla Award for Scientific Research 2018 from K.K. Birla Foundation, Professor Lalji Singh Achievement Award 2019 by ADNET, Professor Jayashankar Life Achievement Award 2019 by Professor Jayashankar, Telangana State Agriculture University, Uttar Pradesh Government Sanman 2018, Outstanding Faculty Research Award 2018 by Careers 360 in India, and Qilu Friendship Award 2016 by People's Government of Shandong Province, China. Research Excellence India Citation Award 2015 by Thomas Reuters, USA. The Illumina Agriculture Greater Good Initiative Award USA 2013, IPGI Science Leadership Award USA 2017, Young Crop Scientist Award 2013 of Crop Science Society of America. In addition, he has been honored in several other countries, including Nepal, the Philippines, Vietnam, the United Arab Emirates. Professor Varshney has published more than 300 research papers in high impact journals, including 14 papers in Nature journals, which are the most important journals in the life science category. He has been recognized as highly cited researcher by Thomas Reuters for last 6 years in row, and one of the 10 most influential Indian scientists by Times of India, which is a leading Indian daily newspaper. For the information of the participants, just want to mention that he has an H index, which is the now considered as the most important output-oriented product. H index of 95, probably the highest for any plant scientist working in India, and total citations exceeding 35,000. So with this, I welcome you, Dr. Raju sir, for sparing your time to be with us and for delivering this important lecture. So maybe with the permission of the Vice Chancellor, unless you want to say something, I can request Professor Varshney to Sir, you want to say something?
Yeah, just I welcome speaker Dr. Rajiv. Good morning. How are you? I hope yourself and your family members and all our friends are at ICRISAT are keeping fine.
Yes, sir.
And it is very exciting and also very happy to see you on our video conferencing and through this webinar. And more than 500 people are watching you and listening to you today. And this is one of the first initiative of our university. We have completed almost 9 training programs till yesterday. And this is the 10th training program. We are going to have a valedictory after your lecture. And T.R. Sharma, DDG Crop Science is joining as chief guest. And without wasting time, I welcome you and I request you to deliver your lecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, a very good morning. And I'm really very much pleased to see you here. Hope that you and your family and colleagues are doing fine. Thank Pawan Kulwan for giving me this opportunity. And we are really very happy to see this very good initiative from that Professor K.P. Vishwanatha, Vice Chancellor of MPKV and their team to organize this kind of meetings. And I am very excited to share some of our experience. And as Pawan mentioned, and already have you guys already have seen this thing in your brochure and title. So today I'm going to talk about the 5Gs for climate smart agriculture. We all are aware about the climate smart agriculture and also 5Gs. Many of us started to have the 5Gs in our phone. But the question is that how we can combine, not necessarily with the phone, but I would like to touch these different topics of 5G. Those of you who follow the Twitter, they can follow me on this Twitter account, and so that you can have more and more information about the new areas of the science. Now, let's move to that topic. We know, and whenever we talk about this climate change, we know the whole world is becoming warm and more warm. And here, I'm having this clip from NASA, and you can see that how the whole world during last 100 years or so has been warming. The worst part of this climate change is that majority of the parts of Africa and Asia, including India, they are adversely affected, and especially those regions where the livelihood is dependent on agriculture and where agriculture is dependent on the rainfall. And we think that there are the prediction that this world will be much more warmer, but definitely we don't want to see these kind of things. And we really would like to have the green world. But now if we see that what kind of impact this climate change is having on the major crops, there are already the data in the case of maize, rice, wheat, and other crops, where you can see that this is adversely affecting the yield from 8% to 23%, and price is also increasing. So this is not a good news. Now, when I told that, well, this agriculture in many developing countries is dependent on the rainfall, and now if you see the status of the water shortage, and by 2050, they say that overall water demand will increase by 55%. So basically we will be having less and less amount of that water. So the issue becomes much more serious. Now, other important thing in the context of India is that our population is growing. And you know that this is not a good thing. By 2050, we will be having about 1.66 billion population, and India will be the most populous country in the world again. So we will be having a lot of challenges that how to address this thing. So if you see around the world, we think that we will be having about 10 billion population by 2050. And we need to have about 70% higher food. So with all these issues, I discussed some issues, but there are many issues. But I think that because of all these things, we have a big challenge before the scientific community, before the agriculture community. And that challenge is to produce more from the less, more food from the less resources, because we know that arable land is shrinking. We will be having less amount of water. We are also having the shortage of the labor. And on top of that, we need to see that reduced water footprints, reduced carbon footprint. So all these issues, they force us to adopt some new technology that we can address this issue. Now, plant breeding has been doing a great job. And as you can see that what plant breeding community is doing together with the different disciplines, that basically they are developing the improved varieties which are able to stand withstand with the pest and diseases. They can have the maximized resources, water use efficiency, nutrients, etc., and also can stabilize the yield despite the changing climate. So all these things, they are doing good. But now the question is that we have made some progress, but now when you would like to see the 2050, we need to go much more higher. And in this context, if you would like to compare the agriculture science development together with the telecommunications technology, and I think telecommunication technology is one of those few technologies which has made positive impact on the human life in the most significant manner. But if we see its progress, its evolution, we all aware that with the first telephone from Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, in 1926 we had the first transatlantic call. We started to have the area code in 1946. We had the mobile phone in 73. Then we got the different kind of technology, and now we are talking about the Internet of Things. So while sitting at any place, you can know each and everything, and especially in the current lockdown period, because of this COVID-19, even we are sitting at home, but we are aware, we can watch, we can understand, we can see anything on our mobile phone. And this has been possible because of these different advances in this technology which are powering these telecommunications. In 80s, we had 1G, then 90s, we had 2G, then we started to have the digital voice call. Then we had 3G, mobile broadband, introduction of smartphones, 4Gs. And now in 2020s, we are talking about the 5Gs, where we have enhanced mobile broadband, and this wireless is going for the industrial application. So you can see that just in 200 years or so, agriculture, or 150 years or so, this telecommunication technology has done wonders. Now if we see how we have been able to do in the area of plant breeding or agriculture, we know that about 10,000 years back, we had the crop domestication. There were major milestones. So for instance, in 1865, we had the Mendel's law. You remember, Graham Bell came up with this first phone in 1873. And we had this Mendel's law in 1865, so before that. But then at least good news is that after the Mendel's law, we started to have the era of the crossbreeding. We started to have the hybrid breeding. We had the mutagenesis. And in 1953, we understood the structure of the DNA. And after that, especially after 90s, we started to move in the area of basically DNA-based breeding. And this is in the different areas. One is the molecular breeding or marker-assisted selection. Another is in the area of the GMs or genetic engineering. And now we are talking about the precise breeding. So this is good. However, it seems that we were not able to make that kind of progress which telecommunication technology has done. So we thought, can we have the 5Gs in our agriculture, in our plant breeding? And recently, some of my colleagues and we have proposed that yes, 5Gs can be implemented in the crop breeding. And these 5Gs, they include, in our opinion, first G for the genome, second G for the germplasm, third G is for the genes, fourth G, genomic breeding, and fifth G is about the gene editing. And if we are able to address or implement all these things in our crop breeding program, I think that we can have similar kind of advances in those breeding activities as other areas, especially telecommunication, is doing. Before I move to the next slides, I would just like to mention that I hope that everybody is able to hear me very clear, or if something problem, I can change something. Pawan, are you able to hear me well?
Yes, go on, sir.
Okay. So now let's talk about the first G. And so when we talk about the genome, so genome is basically the total constituent of the DNA of a cell, of an organism. And if we can understand the genome, this will be fantastic. And especially when you talk about the society, then agriculture is really important. But on top of that, human health is more important. Now we know that because of the health and the current scenario, this is the best time that we can assess the value of the health, that all of us are sitting in our houses, we are sitting in our office, and we are doing everything because of the COVID-19. So health is very important. And then when we had this, after 1953, this DNA structure, so the scientific community thought that in the case of the human health, can we understand the genes responsible for the different diseases? And with this perspective, they started the Human Genome Sequencing Project. They started somewhere times in 1990, and after 13 years and the investment of $3 billion, they came up with the human genome. they came up with the idea that how many genes we have. And though this work is still in the progress, that how they are able to basically associate and find the causal gene related to those diseases. But the good news is that when we started to move in this direction, there were a lot of advances in the sequencing technology. And in the case of the plant sciences, we started to have the Arabidopsis genome, rice genome sequence. So we had all these sequences available. Then the era came that we cannot spend $3 billion to sequence one genome. Can we reach a stage that we can sequence the genome in just $100 kind of thing in half an hour? And because of these regions, there was advances in the sequencing technology. And now we moved from the gel-based sequencing to capillary sequencing, next-gen sequencing, and different kind of sequencing technology. And then plant science community thought, let's start to utilize this sequencing technology in those decoding the genomes of the crop plant. And with this objective, at ICRISAT, we established the Center of Excellence in Genomics and Systems Biology way back in 2007. And we work, those of you who know about ICRISAT, we work on the 5 important crops, 3 legume crop, chickpea, pigeon pea, and peanut, 2 cereal crops, sorghum and pulse millet, and also other type of millets. In these crops, we did not have much genomic resources available earlier. So when we started the Center of Excellence in Genomics and Systems Biology, in addition to have this high throughput sequencing genotyping machine, we also have the high performance computational genome analysis facilities. We are working with large number of partners around the world, including with the MPKV. And then we are working on the different aspect, and I will touch some of these points very soon. So what we did that together with our colleagues at this genomic center, and I think some of my colleagues, they're already listening this talk. So together with these colleagues and colleagues from ICRISAT with our partners around the world, we sequenced the genomes of several crops. The first genome we sequenced, assembled, this was in 2012, pigeon pea, then chickpea, pulse millet, and 2 different wild ancestors of groundnut. And this year we also sequenced that basically last year and late last year, the cultivated tetraploid peanut. And so all these genome sequence, we have done that one. And not only for ICRISAT mandate crops, we have also been collaborating with different partners around the world, and we have contributed or led sequencing of genomes of several other legume and oilseed crops, including sesame, mung bean, ajuk bean, jatropha, soya bean, etc. So now we have been able to assemble these genomes, and then together with the bioinformatics approaches, you are also can estimate the number of, you can predict the genes, you can understand the function of the genes, but now we need to prove the function of the genes by seeing the genetic material in the field, etc. So this is a different story. But nevertheless, we have done good work, I think, in this genome sequencing program. Now, sometimes people ask that, well, whether this sequencing can help and in what areas this helps. And I will talk some of these application aspects later. But one thing I would like to mention, that majority of us in India and around the world, we eat rice, wheat, or maize, etc. Only limited number of people are eating pulse millet. But nevertheless, when I was talking about the climate change, we know that climate change will make the impact on the productivity of rice, maize, wheat, etc. But now, because of that help of the pulse millet genome sequence and its comparison with different cereals, we came out with that idea, or we came out with this number of the genes that in the case of pulse millet, we have some genes, and especially they are related to the BACC biosynthesis pathway. And these genes, they are present in the higher abundance as compared to other cereals. Now, of course, one needs to validate, but these provides the help and the hope that these kind of genes which are present in the pulse millet can be used to enhance the drought tolerance, the heat tolerance in the case of rice, maize, and wheat, other species as well. So this is the beauty of this, having the genome sequence available. Another example I would like to mention about soybean. Everyone knows about the soybean around the world. Pigeon pea, only people in India and some other countries know. But when we had this pigeon pea genome, and pigeon pea and soybean, they are closely related. And then some colleagues from United Kingdom, they asked us to provide the genome sequence of pigeon pea. We provided them even before the publication. But one thing I want to mention, the soybean, there is a disease called Asian soybean rust, and there is no natural variation available. But this group was successfully developed the resistant variety for Asian soybean rust in soybean by using one pigeon pea gene. So they developed the varieties, But at the same time, even if you can see the title of that paper, that a pigeon pea gene confers resistance to Asian soybean rust. So what I wanted to tell friends, so even if you are sequencing the genes or genomes from pearl millet and pigeon pea, etc., which are not those great crops for some people, but nevertheless, these crops can be useful to provide the information to develop the better varieties, even the major crops. Now, this is a new technology we call the 3D technology or IC technology, because in our group, when we sequence the genomes of pigeon pea or chickpea, at that time, these genomes, they were not really very high quality because they were developed based on the Illumina sequencing technology. We had a lot of pseudo molecules, but now with the help of this high-C technology, we have developed the 11, like in the case of pigeon pea, we have the 11 chromosomes. So basically chromosome level assembly, the same thing in the case of chickpea and case of groundnut. So what I'm trying to say that once you have the genome assembled, you can keep on improving it. When you have the genome from one species, from one exosome, now then you may have the different kind of genes present in other exosomes or varieties. And for that purpose, there was a concept of the pangenome. So for instance, if you compare 3 different varieties, some genes will be common, they are called core genome, and some genes will be different, and these are called dispensable genome, and this core genome is the common. This is basically required. And in these things, they are the different kind of genes which are associated with the different diseases, etc. So this was the pangenome. Our group is developing the pangenome. But recently, we also gave a concept of the super pangenome. And what we are saying that not talking about these varieties or exosomes from one species, what we are talking, we are developing the pangenome for one species, second species, third species, fourth species. And then we are developing a pangenome for all these different species together, and we call that super pangenome. So basically you are having the pangenomes of the pangenomes, and this will be one approach that how we will be able to transfer the genes or use the gene information from the different species to the cultivated species. So these are the things are moving, and in this direction at ICRISAT together with our colleagues, we also have developed the genome assembly for 8 different wild species of chickpea. And now we are comparing this thing with the cultivated chickpea species, etc. Now, when you identify the genes, that's great. But now the thing is that which gene is expressed at what stage, which tissue, etc. we do not know. So what we did that we developed gene expression atlas. Atlas is something like that, what we heard, read or study in the geography classes, like that which city is present in which country, in which continent. Same way, now in the case of chickpea, we have 28,000 genes, that which gene is present in which tissue at what stage. So for with this purpose, we developed the chickpea gene expression atlas. Similarly, we have developed the pigeon pea gene expression atlas. And recently, we also developed the gene expression atlas for groundnut. And when you have the gene expression atlas, what you do that you sequence the RNA from the different tissues. And in each of these species, we have done the RNA sequencing for more than 30 tissues. And then we try to correlate these things with the tissues, and we are trying to understand the temporal and spatial expression of these different genomes, different genes. And then we use the gene expression atlas to associate these genes with the different traits. So we have done these kind of things. So now, remember friends, I was talking about the genome assemblies. We got the gene expression atlas. Now we are also moving towards the proteome map, metabolome map, etc. And this is very useful resource. So this was about the 1G. That for when you would like to talk about the 1G, basically you need to characterize the genome, and you need to have the understanding of that genome level. Now, second is the germplasm. When I say the germplasm, I would like to say the germplasm should be characterized very well at the genome level as well as the phenotyping level. If you would like to see the germplasm around the world, right now there are more than 1,700 gene banks, and there are 7.4 million exosomes around the world. We need to characterize these genes, germplasm, at genetic level as well as at the phenotypic level, and then we need to associate these things together. With this perspective, we started to sequence the germplasm collection here at ICRISAT, and here we had these 3 papers in the same issue of the Nature Genetics, which had the details about the resequencing of chickpea and also the genome assembly and resequencing of peanut. And in the case of pigeon pea, we also sequenced another set of the 292 pigeon pea exosomes few years back. So basically, in the case of chickpea, pigeon pea, and groundnut, we already have done the sequencing of germplasm characterization. So basically, characterization of these lines at the sequence level. So for instance, After sequencing about 429 chickpea lines, we got about 4.9 million SNPs, and you can understand these things in the different groups, including the wild species. Earlier, we used to have the difficulty even for SSR markers, but now we got the large number of SNPs here. And this kind of data can help us to understand the different kind of population structure. And then they can say that, well, which cluster is good and how we should like to use the germplasm in our breeding perspective. So you can do a lot of interesting stuff. The other thing is, in generally, what happens that in these crops like chickpea, pigeon pea, you have very low level of genetic diversity. We try to understand why this is happening. So what we did that we tried to understand the selection sweeps, and what we did that we compared the diversity of the land races and wild, and we found that wild species are having more diversity than the land races. And similarly, when you compare the land races with the breeding lines, then we realize that you are having this land races are having higher diversity. Now we identify those genomic regions, that which genomic regions have undergone the selection pressure, and can we change these things in our breeding program, that the varieties which have become the narrow genetic diversity, now how can we bring the diversity from that land races, etc. So this is very good information. Not only that one, we also had, so this was the one area about this land race breeding line I already mentioned, but the other thing is, if you would like to understand that where this species was originated, how this was moved from one place to other place, so we do this diversity analysis in that continent perspective. And based on this information, and those of you who have learned about this plant breeding or crop evolution, you know about the center of the origin, center of evolution around the world given by N.I. Vavilov. And based on these information, our study identified the chickpea was originated here in Fertile Crescent, and then this moved from the Fertile Crescent or Mediterranean regions to Afghanistan, and then this was introduced in India. And after that, basically that kept on moving from to the different parts of the world. And all these intro story, you can figure it out based on the sequencing information. But the most important part was that we wanted to understand the genes or marker associated with the trait. So what we did that we did the phenotyping of these 300 lines for drought and heat tolerance related trait, which are important trait for the climate change thing. And what we did that based on the genome-wide association analysis, we found several interesting genes which are associated with these drought and heat tolerance trait. And now this is the high time that we can use these genes either through molecular breeding or through the genetic engineering approaches. And we have done similar kind of work in the case of pigeon pea, groundnut. I will not discuss this thing in the detail, but these things are already available in the paper. The other thing is that we wanted to make the breeding cost effective. So basically when you do the genotyping of these breeding population, people are still using the SSR marker, which is very expensive. But so what we did that we try to convert, or we try to develop the SNP genotyping platform, because SSR based genotyping is expensive, takes time. So what we did that based on this sequencing data or so, we developed the 60,000 SNP arrays in chickpea, pigeon pea, and peanut, and all these things have been published. And now the good thing is that in a single experiment, you can generate the data for about 70,000 to 60 to 70,000 SNPs, unlike those SSR markers that you keep on going in these smaller parts or so. So this is the way that things are moving. And this was about the second G, that how you would like to characterize the germplasm. Now the third G, this is the genes, that we would like to understand the genes. We would like to identify the markers associated with the genes. And here I would like to give a classical story of our chickpea. And here what happened that we had these, and I think we also had the collaboration from Pawan Kulwal also on this project. So what we did that we had these two mapping population of chickpea, and our colleagues, Dr. Puran Gaur, he developed that one. Some of our physiologists, Dr. Vincent Vazdesh, Dr. Junichi Kashiwagi, etc. They did the phenotyping of these population for root related traits. And then basically we did this QTL mapping in two different populations. We found a genomic region which contains the QTLs for 13 out of 20 drought tolerance traits. We called it QTL hotspot. And after that, we are going further refining this QTL hotspot region, and we are using the map-based cloning approach, etc. Now we already have the information that how many genes are present in these regions, because we have the genome sequence available, we got these regions available, we can compare and we can identify the genes. So this is the way that we are identifying the genes. Now for mapping, you cannot keep on doing always SSR. We are using the new approaches now. So for instance, another approach is called genotyping by sequencing. Here you sequence the entire population at the lower coverage with some restriction enzyme. And then by using the GBS based approach, we have developed genetic maps for Fijiram, and like for three different populations, we have the phenotype these populations in the different regions, Patancheru, Gulbarga and Tandur, and based on these things, we do the QTL analysis. We identify the QTLs for the Fijiram wilt resistance related trait. The other approach is that not only that skim sequencing or low coverage sequencing, you can also sequence the entire population at larger coverage. And here together with Dr. Wauju Go and several of our colleagues, we have sequenced the entire population of one groundnut population, which segregates for the disease resistance. And when you have this whole genome sequencing population, you can compare with the genome and you can easily identify the genes associated with these different traits. Now, if you don't have that much money available that you cannot sequence those populations, then what we can do, that when you have these populations, you have the phenotyping data. Based on these things, you can develop the pools of these different or diverse phenotype, and then you just sequence these two pools. And then by using the approach of, we call them QTL-seq, you can easily reach in the genome, and then you can identify those genes. So this is the QTL-seq approach. So at ICRISAT, we have been using these different kind of approaches, and we are mapping a lot of traits. Now I would like to also highlight another example of that, how we are using the functional genomics and the systems biology approach. In the case of Pigeon Pea, we are having the 3-line hybrid breeding system, like A line and R line makes the hybrid. And to maintain these A line, we use the B line as a maintainer line, and we keep on going this thing. But now in the case of Pigeon Pea, we had one line, and this line is basically environment sensitive male sterile line, that at one particular temperature or condition, this is the A line and remain sterile, other temperature or other condition, this remains the fertile. And then our colleagues and collaborators, we have done this analysis in details, and we figured out that, well, this line, if you are having less than 24 degrees Celsius temperature fertile, more than 24 sterile, and we did a lot of work. And then after that, we asked the question, can we identify the genes or things which are associated, related to this sterility? So what we did, that we have done this analysis, the transcriptome analysis on these different stages, and metaphase, anaphase, telophase, tetrad, microspore, and pollens or so. And as you can see here, that in the case of microspore, in the sterile, you don't have anything. In the fertile, you are having these intact cells. So what we did, that we did this transcriptome analysis by doing the RNA sequencing. We generated large scale that sequencing data. And then by combining the transcriptome analysis, gene ontology analysis, metabolic pathways or so, and we combined all these things together, we called it the systems biology approach. And based on these things, we can figure it out that, well, we have some involvement of auxin biosynthesis related genes, which make this plant or with this line at one particular temperature, high temperature sterile pollen and low temperature fertile pollen. And we also validated this thing that on the same plant, when you are having the auxin treatment, then you are basically converting the sterile lines, sterile birds or flowers in the fertile. So this is the way that you can identify the genes which are not just associated, or also they are really very close to causal, to demonstrate the causal effect. So what I wanted to say, this 3G approach, that you need to have the genes causing the effect or markers associated with the trait which are having the higher diagnostic value. And by combining all these different approaches, here at ICRISAT, we have been able to map about 20 to 50 traits in different crops, in chickpea, pigeon pea, and groundnut, etc. So this does not mean that for each trait you can do the molecular breeding right now, but the trait where we are having the high diagnostic value markers, you can already use these things. And we have been successfully using these things. And this 4G is called genomic breeding. So this is not, I used to call earlier genomics assisted breeding, where you are helping, where we are using the genomics tool to help the breeding, called genomics assisted breeding. Now together with Professor Chipa Jhang and other colleagues, we call this thing genomic breeding. What does it mean? That now we got a lot of genomic information available, genomes available. So based on the analysis, you do not need to do breed for the lines. Now we can do that. You can do the breeding for the new genome. So basically you are making these different kind of new genomes, and we call this genomic breeding. And you have the different approaches, marker assisted backcrossing, marker assisted recurrent selection, etc. And many of you have already used these approaches: marker assisted selection, marker assisted backcrossing, marker assisted recurrent selection. And now some new approaches are also there: forward breeding, haplotype based breeding, genomic selection. I will not have time to discuss these things, but will be happy to share the papers and discuss with you guys bilaterally. But even if you use any approach, we need to have the analytical and decision support tools in the center, because these are very important. to provide the support, to provide the help, to make the decision that which line needs to be used in the breeding program. Anyway, I will give some success stories. And here, by using the marker assisted selection in the genetic background of JJ11, ICRISAT and its partner, they developed a new line and which was released by Ethiopian Institute of Agriculture Research in Ethiopia. And this is the variety called JL2. And this is the first ever marker assisted backcrossing variety of chickpea, which is having the higher yield than recurrent parents and also with the check. And this is fantastic variety in the case of Ethiopia. Not only in Ethiopia, even in the case of India also, here Dr. Bhardwaj, who is a chickpea breeder from IRI, and his group and our group work together, and then they introgress this QTL hotspot in Pusa 10216 line, and we have developed this line. So this is that they introgress in Pusa 372 genetic background, and they developed this line called Pusa 10216, and this variety was released this year. And this was became in the case of India, this is the first molecular breeding variety in India in the case of chickpea. Not only that one, this is another variety. This is coming from the University of Agricultural Sciences, Raichur. And here, Dr. Mannur, and then followed by other breeders, Dr. Lakshman and Dr. Yeri. They are our good collaborators. And together with these colleagues, we developed other lines. And this was the Annigiri variety, which was the Fusium wilt sensitive variety. But by introgressing the markers, we were successful to develop the Super Annigiri variety. This was also released. Now there's another variety coming, improved JG74 in Madhya Pradesh. So anyway, so in the case of chickpea, you could already see the 3 success story. Now the other success story is about the groundnut. In the case of groundnut, we are having these, because this is the oil seed crop. If you see its oil, then you are having 3 different kind of oil: palmitic acid, linoleic acid, and oleic acid. And basically linoleic acid is about 30% or so, which is not good for health. But now in United States, many varieties, these are like this kind of thing, that oleic acid is present in more than 90% component of that oil is the oleic acid. Indian varieties, they are like that one. But what we did, that by using this molecular breeding approaches, we converted these kind of lines in such kind of lines where you can see that more than 80% oil content is the oleic acid. And India already released 2 varieties, Girnar 4 and Girnar 5, the first set of the high oleic groundnut varieties from the Directorate of the Groundnut Research from Junagadh. So this is another success story in the case of groundnut. We have also working with University of Agriculture Sciences, Dharwad, with the group of Dr. Chanvara Gowda, followed by Dr. Ramesh Watt and other colleagues. And what we did, that we also developed some lines, like this is the tag 24 is susceptible variety. We had this GPVD4 resistant variety. We introgressed a QTL from GPVD4 to this variety. And now this is that introgress line tag 24 plus rust QTL, and which is having really higher yield. And this is already in the ACRIP trials. And these are the MAVC drive lines. And we hope that some of these lines will also be released as improved varieties in coming years. Not only in India, we are also taking these lines to different parts of the world. And this is the picture from 2018 when I was visiting some of my collaborators in Ghana, Nigeria, and Mali. And some of these molecular breeding lines, they also showed really good expression of resistance in these lines. Now, we have developed the high oleic lines, we have developed the digitation lines. So we thought, let's combine these things together. So we have made these complex crosses for foliar digiresistance, high oleic resistance, and we are moving this thing further. But through this approach, we already got some lines. And here you can see the Crop Journal also published this in a cover article. And this was that our variety, which we were introgressing. And now you have converted this line like this kind of thing, and you can see clear cut expression. So this is another success story of this molecular breeding. So you could see that now from this 4th G approach, from the genomic breeding approaches, you can develop the new set of the lines which are good, and you can keep on working on this aspect. Now, finally, the 5th G is the gene editing. And here you may be already heard about the GM, etc. But in this gene editing approach, you just make precise editing. So you can convert this base, you can remove this base, and this is called gene editing. And by using this gene editing, you can also develop these varieties much more faster manner. In the case of gene editing, there are 4 different approaches. The mega nuclease was the first approach, then zinc finger nuclease, Talens, and right now this is very popular approach called CRISPR-Cas, and nowadays there are different versions. Again, I will not have time to discuss these things. You can read in these different papers, but the point is, which I wanted to tell, that by using the gene editing, you can do the different kind of thing, including gene editing, where you are having this precise thing, or fragment deletion, base substitution, knock-in, multiple alleles, or activation and suspension. So you can use any of these approach. And in fact, the good news is that there are already gene editing products developed in several crops, in several traits, like in the case of corn, you have the Vexicorn. In the case of tobacco, they already have developed some lines which are having that human therapeutic proteins. Soybean, you are having the high oleic thing. So in the several crops, already are getting the gene editing line. And now depending on the issue of those regulatory affairs in the different countries, in some countries like United States or Canada, they are treated in the normal varieties. In some countries, you are having a little bit complex approach. India is already moving ahead in this direction. So this depends on the different aspect. But one thing, and this is from Ian Godwin, he is one of the famous gene editing scientists from Kafi, Queensland, Australia. And he mentioned that if you would like to have the transgenic and editing approaches, then genomics can play a very, very important role, because the genes, they need to come from the genomics approaches, and you need to work very closely in these things together. Now, how this is happening, and I'm taking this slide from some RISE colleagues from IRRI and other colleagues. Now, if you see the RISE genome sequencing project, I mentioned the RISE was started way back in 98, then they had that this genome sequence available in 2005, etc. So they have gone a long way. Now they got different kind of genome sequence available, etc. But now what they can do, and there is one in the case of rice, basically what they did, that for the bacterial wilt related thing, they already have some information about the sweet genes, where they have this EB up at upstream. What these colleagues did, that they have did the exploration of all 3000 rice genome sequence, and they try to understand the variation in the EB regions. And then when they identified the good regions, that where when you are having this pathogen affected the rice, then which mutation you should have based on these things, they developed 3 different lines by using the CRISPR editing, sweet 11, sweet 13, sweet 14, and they also combine these things together. So basically by doing this kind of approaches, and then we were also asked to write a commentary on this about the rice blight. But then in this paper, what we told, that based on these colleagues, Oliva et al. 2019 and Yom et al. 2019. So what these colleagues, they did, that they have developed these CRISPR editings individually, they have done this together. And not only that, they have combined these things together, and they have developed a kit, sweet kit. And with the help of this sweet kit, in future, you can go to any field, you can identify that which race is affecting or causing the blight in your field. If you are having already resistant marker, then how can you do that one? So basically this is really good. So you are not just delivering this one-time product, but you are making these dynamic kits, and they will be very helpful to address those issues. And so this was the example of rice. And in our case, like in the case of pulp millet, we have the downy mildew, bacterial leaf strike disease. In the case of pigeon pea, we have fusarium wilt, dry root rot. In the case of chickpea, we got fusarium wilt, ascochyta blight. So the question is, we got the genome sequence variation available. Now the question is, do we have the genes associated with these things, and we can do the variation, and we can do similar kind of approach as rice folks did. So again, there is a lot of things to be done. But then there are very opportunity. I think this is really exciting time, and we have lots of potential, lots of approaches right now to deal with these things. So friends, that was the 5th G. So remember that I started from the 1st G to 5th G. And if we are having these 5 Gs in our crop improvement program, we will be very happy, or I think that this will be very exciting to use these things there. So now I would like to summarize my presentation, because Pawan wanted me to have some time, and I also really enjoyed to discuss, to address some of your question if you have. And so now the summary is that plant breeding needs to be powered with the 5G. And I already discussed these 5G, like genome sequence and genomic resources are essential. We need to have the germplasm characterization at both sequencing and the phenotyping level. And superior lines can also be identified. Superior haplotypes can also be identified based on the sequencing. In the 3G, we need to have the genes, and the genes, then also genes associated markers, so that you can use in the molecular breeding approach, gene editing approach, etc. Genomic breeding is the key now. And these approaches are not basically on one or the other at the cost of one of the other, but these need to be supplementary, complementary. And I also mentioned the gene editing. This is a key technology for addressing the interactable traits. And lastly, you do any kind of research, we need to have the conducive policy environment for adopting new technology. And our scientific community should be basically come forward to embrace these new technology also. With these things, I would like to thank all of our partners and friends, and I am very happy to see many names in this list that who are my friends. So thanks guys to join me in this thing, and thanks for all your collaboration. And at Genomics Center, we are having the partnership for more than 180 partners from 35 countries in 6 continents. And we are very excited. We are very privileged to have their contribution. And with these words, would like to thank you very much, and will be very happy to take up any question or yeah. So I'm done. Thank you very much once again. Thank you very much, Professor Vishwanath sir. Thank you very much, Pawan Kulwal. Now I'm happy to take up any question.
It was, thank you, Dr. Rajiv. I think, Pawan, there were some hands were rising and some questions. I think we will have some time for questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Raju sir, for your exhaustive presentation. I know that it is very difficult to cover this much, but because you are habituated to all these type of scenarios, so you made it possible.
Or comment, Pawan?
Such
a compliment or comment?
No, you made it possible, sir. Nobody other can do this exhaustive presentation in 50 minutes. So thank you very much. So on behalf of the entire team, cast, as well as our university, I would like to sincerely thank you for your excellent presentation. I hope all the participants must have gained some insights about. So there is time still left with us so that we can have some questions. So Prashant, can you moderate with the questions? Our coordinator will put some questions raised by the participant. So over to you, Prashant.
I'm also able to read those questions, and one thing before Prashant does, that some question I will be able to answer here. Otherwise, they can also ask this question by email or by tweet or something. So we will be happy to do anything.
Yeah, that's possible.
Okay, Prashant.
Yes, sir. One of the question is, what are the important software for huge genome data analysis?
Say it again, Prashant. So what is the use?
What are the different softwares for huge genome analysis?
Yeah. So this depends on our objective, that once you have the genome sequence available, that what is your purpose. And even at our genome center, we already have developed a large number of tools and scripts that are also available in public domain. So depending on the objective, if you want to do the mapping of the trait, if you want to have the gene annotation, if you would like to use them in the breeding program. So for each thing now, there are a large number of tools and technologies available. We'll be happy to share those things depending on your interest.
What are high-C sequence methods?
So high-C is a novel sequencing technology. So earlier what we used to do in Illumina sequencing technology or so, that you used to cut those small in the fragments and you do that after sequencing, you assemble like this thing. In the high-C, this is basically you are taking the larger fragment or so, and then basically this is much more improved version of those third generation Illumina sequencing technology. And here the assembly which we develop, they are much more better than those Illumina based sequencing technology.
What will be the cost per sample for GBS?
So just depend that what is your genome size, how much sequencing data you need to generate, and how deeper you would like to do. But then in depending on the different crop, generally this goes from maybe $25 to $35 or something per sample kind of thing. But depending, and if you are having larger volume, you can interact with the different colleagues. In the case some people would like to do it, at our Genomics Center, we have our colleague Anu Chitkineni. They can send an email to her. She can also provide those details to them.
What kind of genomic approaches will be more effective in case of crops like tea and coffee?
So yeah, so in those cases, I have not worked on these things, but some of the new approaches, like basically the genomic prediction, genomic selection kind of approaches, they are that approaches this can be used in those perennial crop species. So I will, my friends, there are many questions, so I will be taking few. This does not mean that I'm taking only those questions for which I know the answer, but I will be taking just randomly. Yeah.
People are asking about explain CRISPR-Cas.
Okay.
Some people are asking.
Yeah. So well, thank you very much, sir. So again, I have just put one slide in the CRISPR-Cas, and what you do that by using this approach, first, if you have the information about a particular gene and even the nucleotide, that because of this variation, this variety became resistant, this variety became susceptible. So now the question is that how you can convert this line, or you can excise this nucleotide, put the nucleotide, and this is the way that this approach behaves. And there are different methods. People use these different approaches there. Okay, so this was one. Now I will take some quick question. There was one question about the off targets in the genome editing. Yes, many times you can have these off targets, and the best thing for this will be that once you have these gene edited lines, you need to sequence those lines, and you can easily identify the lines where you don't have the off targets. There was one thing that, sir, can you explain about the transcriptome profiling? What you do in the transcriptome profiling, you take these two different varieties or two different stages, and then take these tissues, extract the RNA, you sequence them, and then you compare those things, and then try to identify the differentially expressed genes, and that's called transcriptome profiling. There is one question that how can you prevent the problem of the global loss of the agriculture crop genetic diversity? This is very important. So this is not, so what is happening now? And once I was reading somewhere that if you see our past, we used to grow a large number of crops, species, but slowly because of the number of regions, this diversity keeps on going down, down, down. Even if you saw now our food basket, there are not more than 9 to 20 crops. And majority, but earlier we used to have more than 200. So one is that we need to enhance, we need to have this diversification of our diet. Second is that for a given crop, now when you are talking about the varieties, which are having very narrow genetic base, you need to keep on bringing the diversity from the land races. You need to enhance this diversity further. During your exploration of genome study of plant crops, you have come across any mechanism plant which are associated with the degradation of the pesticide by themselves or other crops? No, we have not done any kind of experiments like this kind of thing. There is this question, gene expression atlas. As I told that when I was a kid in the grade 5 or 6, I used to have an atlas book. And then they used to ask my teacher, okay, please tell us that where are the savanna regions, or where is the Cherrapunji, or where is this thing. So basically the atlas is that you need to identify the location of a place. Now, in the genome, when we say the 28,000 genome, and then we need to figure it out that which gene is present in which tissue, what is the expression. So if you can pinpoint that one, we call that gene expression atlas. What are the prospects of using proteomics in agriculture crops? Yes, these are very important because at the genome and the transcriptome, they are having the transcription, translation thing. But after that, when we see in the field, then we see these things based on that phenotype. This is coming from the protein. So we need to analyze those things there. Okay, some people are appreciating me. Thanks to all of those people like Dr. S. Lalita and Manisi saying, can the genes identified in superpen genome be used for different crop species? Yes, this depends that if you are having from this different crop species, if they're crossable, you can. But if not, then you need to use the new approaches like gene editing kind of thing. So at least you got the genes and then you can move further. In the case of chickpea, how to screen functional stay grain trait by molecular technique? Well, either if you should have the trait, then you should go for the component trait of that one, or you should have some markers or genes associated with the trait, then you can screen, unless you cannot do that one. GWAS studies, what is the number of traits should be considered? That's up to you. Rather question will be that how many germplasm you should take. What is Shweta Tiwari? What is the cost of next generation sequencing? Again, depend. She is also asking that Roche and Solid at ICRISAT we are using the Illumina sequencing technology. So basically, we keep on using Illumina, and I think that this is the way forward now for using the Illumina sequencing technology. Roche and Solid, they are either dying technology or so. Pangenome, Yagni, you should browse Pangenome plus Varshney. You will find several papers. You can read that one. Sir, why it cannot 6G because of the genomic selection? Sunil Gangurade. So Sunil, he is my student. He is also asking a question here. So Sunil, the 6G genomic selection is already the part of the genomic breeding. So we do not need to have the next separate 6G for fun. Maybe when telecommunication technology will reach on the 6G, we will come up with some 6G at that time point. Anyway, Pawan, so now back to you. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
So thank you very much, sir, for your excellent lecture. Just want to mention one thing. Not all the students from different parts of the country get the opportunity to listen to you. Thank you for sparing your time that you made it possible so that not only faculty members, but also the students from all the different states of India as well as some from abroad. We also have some students from abroad, from Africa and Australia also who are in the session. So they also got benefited because of your talk. So on behalf of MPKV Rahuri as well as the Center for Advanced Agriculture Science and Technology for Climate Smart Agriculture Water Management, I sincerely thank you. So with this, our first session is over.
Before Pawan, if you go before that, I would like to thank you once again and Vice Chancellor sir and your team and also all the colleagues who have joined this presentation. Thank you and back to you.
You can stay back for valedictory.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you, sir.